Stubbs the Zombie may be the only single-player game in which you play as a zombie trying to hook up with the love of his life. Huh, did I get your attention already? Need me to slow down? Fine, I will. In Stubbs the Zombie, you play as, well, Stubbs the Zombie. During a scientific boom in the city of Punchbowl, PA, Stubbs rises from his grave in the dirt to grab a hot dog. A robot, which you learn has made life in Punchbowl a cakewalk, approaches Stubbs and scolds him for his act, and gives him a tour of the area, which acts as the tutorial of the game. At the end, Stubbs sees a billboard for a woman named Maggie Monday, who is like royalty to the city of Punchbowl. He falls in love immediately. And the remainder of the game is all about Stubbs getting the woman. Being the zombie, things are kinda stacked up against Stubbs. Pretty much every other citizen is out to stop his quest for love. But Stubbs has some tricks up his torn up sleeves. He has a standard swipe, used to do basic damage to your enemies. Once an enemy has been smacked around enough, they will be stunned, and from here, you can opt to eat their brains. Doing so has a bunch of benefits, such as charging your ranged attacks and restoring a sliver of health. Zombies are created no matter how you kill them, which seems a bit odd, but it works. You can shove zombies towards areas, or press up on the D-pad in order to command them to follow you. Honestly, there isn't a ton of use in doing so, as they'll normally trail you unless there are some tasty brains nearby. They also don't always travel between areas unless you put a little effort into it. Either way, having an army of zombies does help distract breathing humans from hitting you. If you do start getting overwhelmed, which will probably happen at some point, there are some unorthodox tools that you can utilize. One of them is Stubbs' ass. He has an area stun attack in the form of noxious gas emitted from his colon, and when unleashing it, you have a few seconds where you get some free shots at some brains. It is so lethal that it can even penetrate tank armor. Silent? No. But definitely deadly. You can also throw an organ. Up to 3 of these can be accumulated, and eating some brains will regrow these organs. Throwing them will act like remote-controlled grenades, as you do need to detonate them manually. They do some hefty damage, and can clear a bit of room for you when things are just starting to get a bit cramped. The other options are a bit more limited in use, but in the right scenario, can be helpful. Stubbs can detach and throw one of his hands, and you can use this to possess an enemy. This can be done for minor things like pressing buttons to open doors, but even better, if you grab onto someone with a firearm, you can use that firearm against your enemies. This won't last forever, as humans aren't exactly bullet sponges themselves, but at least when they fall, they'll turn into a zombie too. This hand is extremely useful in the last parts of the game, when you are going against assault rifle toting soldiers. Finally, Stubbs can go bowling. With his head, of course. I found this to be the least useful of his attacks, as it takes a few seconds for Stubbs to unscrew his head and throw it, and then you really can't move the head around too well, so you need to make sure you line it up properly first. The explosion is nice, sure, but the windup just feels too lengthy. It also takes a while to recharge. I will admit, though, that this attack, due to the damage, is pretty helpful in the final boss battle. And those are the attacks that Stubbs has at his disposal, but you'll probably mainly be relying on the simple slap and eat strategy. And that's fine, but it does make the game a bit stale after you're about halfway through your 4 to 5 hour journey. But it's the humor that made me keep playing. Stubbs is clueless, and each scene often has him running off without a care in the world other than trying to find Maggie Monday. Whether it's the banter of the enemies as they are attacking you or being eaten, the plot monologues, or just Stubbs' mannerisms, I laughed multiple times when playing the game, and it's good because without it, I feel the game would have been somewhat dull. The best part may have been when Stubbs rides a sheep from the farm to a hydro and electric plant, where he realizes that he has to piss so he gets off, pets the sheep, and finds somewhere else to pee. It's just so outlandish that you cannot help but to laugh. There's also a patriotic speech that Stubbs gives his fellow zombies while they are storming a farmhouse that houses an apocalyptic cult. It's just Stubbs saying brains about 100 times, but I still found it funny. And it's good that most of them are enjoyable, as you cannot skip them. The biggest pain point I had with Stubbs is an inconsistent checkpoint system. Although the game starts off easy enough, once you get into sections where the army is after you, things start getting frustrating. Since Stubbs can't really run, a tank is kind of going to take him out a few times until you realize that his gas is that potent. There were a few times where I'd have to replay lengthy segments over and over until randomly a checkpoint activates at a time that it didn't pop up before. I don't know why either. Was it poor coding? Did I fail to take out a specific group of enemies before proceeding? It definitely makes these levels more frustrating than fun. Also, the game gets incredibly dark, and I'm not talking about mood or plot-wise. I'm talking visually. The opening levels, while not entirely bright, at least had some color to them, but the last few are these dark lab corridors and ruined streets. Add in that the game doesn't always explain where you need to go, and you might be roving these areas aimlessly for a while. The music of the game fits the 1950s atmosphere, at least in a few times where you get music. Most of the time, you're just running around to ambience or softer music, but other times, like during the dance-off boss fight, you get cool renditions of classic oldies rock. And yes, you heard me right. Dance-off boss fight. It's just a version of Simon, but it's still fun. As for the graphics, again, they start off with a bit of color, but by the end of the game, everything feels grayed out. On the other hand, the game is surprisingly violent for a game that's got a bit of humor included. Eating brains will always spurt out massive amounts of blood and brain matter, with a visible crater able to be seen in each victim's head. Ouch! The blood will stick to the floors and walls, and after some battles, the room may look like it was painted red. Oddly enough, though, there's not a lot of other gore seen in the game, other than some leaking fluids when pulling off an enemy's arm or shooting a limb off while possessed. Either way, this extra viscera is a nice touch to a game that overall looks just okay. Stubbs the Zombie starts off promising, but honestly, I would have probably gone bored to tears an hour or two in, if not for the humor. I wanted to do this review for years, but due to technical limitations, it was impossible. But a patch a few years ago made playing on modern systems doable again. I'm glad I finally got to experience a full game, but I can't really say it's going to be a game I return to often. It's a decent day killer, since it's fairly short, but it may not be something that will be in your S tier of game ratings. Final score? 5 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.